Good morning, Mr. Stoltenberg. Thank you so much for your coming. It is a very great honor for us and great help, and we feel now that we are not alone. We're working also and hope that Ukraine the war will be over soon. Please say something to the press.
Thank you so much, Alexandra Hildebrandt. It's really a great pleasure and honor, maybe I should say, for me to be here with you. And thank you for showing me around in this museum. What you do here is extremely important. This museum is a landmark for freedom, a landmark for everyone who believes in democracy, in freedom over oppression and autocracy. And that is important because we need to remember what happened at Checkpoint Charlie. We need to remember how divided Europe was with the wall during the Cold War. But we also need to remember it because we see that tyranny and oppression is coming back. We see that in Ukraine with the brutal war of aggression by President Putin, and therefore it is the same message that this museum has conveyed for decades, that the NATO is now conveying when we are supporting Ukraine in the right to defend their sovereignty, their territorial integrity, but not least the freedom and the democracy of the Ukrainians. So there is a long line from when you and your husband established this museum just after the wall came up, and the work of NATO and NATO allies today. And as we discussed, NATO played an important role, a critical role during the Cold War, helped to bring this wall down, and now we are doing all we can to prevent new walls to be rebuilt in Europe. This is my first visit to this museum. And I'm really grateful for you inviting me and for showing me around. But this is not my first time at Checkpoint Charlie, because as a quite young boy or man, I went with my father and my sister to Berlin in the summer of 1972. And then we crossed from West Berlin into East Berlin, and we crossed here at Checkpoint Charlie. And I remember it was, going from the freedom, the open society of West Berlin to the darkness in East Berlin, and the feeling of really crossing from one world to another world. And then we stayed for a few days in East Berlin, and then we crossed back. Of course, that was possible for us because we had the Norwegian passports, we had all the papers, but we also then knew that the people we left in East Berlin, they were not able to leave. The only way to leave was to risk their lives and to try to get out, crossing the border, but knowing that the guards were actually after them all the time. So thank you so much for keeping this museum, for keeping this landmark for freedom, and thank you so much for showing me around today. Thank you.
Mr. Stoltenberg, maybe just one question, if you allow. You mentioned the right of Ukraine to defend itself. When you look at Germany and maybe if Germany can do more in terms of weapons delivery, would you expect Germany to do more, for example, send combat tanks to Ukraine?
Germany is doing a lot to provide support to Ukraine. Germany is providing substantial military support, financial support, humanitarian support, and actually Germany is among those allies that are providing the most support. I will meet with Chancellor Scholz later today, and of course we will then discuss how to make sure that NATO allies sustain their support for Ukraine, including with air defenses, which is extremely important now. But I would like to commend Germany for the support to Ukraine, but also for the fact that Germany has stepped up its efforts in defending NATO territory and NATO allies. The Zeitenwende, the 100 billion extra for defense, is a very clear and strong message from Chancellor Scholz from Germany. And we need that because NATO is now stepping up, increasing our presence, especially in the eastern part of the alliance, to prevent escalation of the war beyond Ukraine and to make sure that all allies are safe in a more dangerous world.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
One
okay,
question,
okay.
sorry.
I didn't listen.
In 61, Western Allies and the Soviet army were on the brink of a direct confrontation here just around the corner. What do you think? Is there a similar risk possible now?
We don't see any indications of any imminent direct military threat against any NATO ally. And that's because we have a NATO sending a very clear message of that we are ready, we are present, and we are ready to defend every inch of NATO territory. Based on NATO's core principle, an attack on one ally will trigger a response from the whole alliance, one for all for one. And the fact that we have increased our presence, not least in the eastern part of the alliance, sends this clear message to Moscow. So we don't see any imminent threat against any NATO ally. Thank you.
Thank you very much.